Did you ever see yourself in the position of president?
Don't expect anything.
Now they know. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ron Sally. Welcome back to another episode of More Than a Sale. It's an absolute pleasure for me to have Mr. Christopher Alexander on More Than a Sale. He's the president of RE/MAX. With over 110 territories of management, we have 144,000 agents worldwide, 25,000 agents Canada-wide.
It's a great role and responsibility.
Who are the third generation, run the organization of RE/MAX.
It's a long history, but I'll try to keep it as short as I can.
Yeah, so the same thing with my father as well. So we're partners. Both of us cannot be on one task. You have to be your own arm, and I have to be my own arm, but we're part of the same bar. I said, how? I'm just a kid.
Be disciplined. You face hardships, no matter what industry you're in. Never give up. No stinking thinking. Surround yourself with good people. If you haven't experienced it, find somebody who has. And just be as positive as you possibly can.
Christopher, there's a burning desire question that I've had for a very long time, and I wanted to ask you. What is it like being the president of RE/MAX Canada?
It's a great role and responsibility. It comes with all kinds of challenges, excitement. It's a wonderful position, and I feel honored to be able to fill it. So
tell our viewers a little bit about that. What does the president of RE/MAX actually do? What does the role entail?
It's really about driving the brand and making sure that we're hitting our initiatives, setting out a vision for my team and the organization, and continuing to drive growth and excellence.
Did you ever see yourself in the position of president?
It's certainly something I aspired to, and it really only became a vision, I'd say probably about 4 or 5 years ago, is where, that's the role I wanted to fill. Starting out in my career, no, but eventually, you build up confidence and you accomplish certain things, and you start to believe like, hey, I could probably do this.
So when somebody wants to be a president or aspires to be, do they get groomed into the role? How does the process work?
I think a bit of both. I mean, you have to have a really curious attitude. You got to really want to understand how your business works and be curious about all the different roles in an organization, whether it's a franchise company like RE/MAX, a brokerage company, whatever your business is. I found curiosity is really important because you want to really get to understand how the organization works from every aspect. And what you'll find is there's certain things you're interested in, other things you're not. Certain skills you have and some you don't. And, finding ways to surround yourself with great people that really complement your skill set is critically important. Like the people that I have on my team, I rely on so heavily. And if I didn't have them in the picture, there's no way I'd be sitting here today.
And you have a great team, and I get a chance to work with them as well. And they're fantastic human beings. Not only are they prompt, but they're on top of their business, which is great. A lot of people know this about you, that you come from an influential family. And if they don't know, now they know. And you are the third generation to run the organization of RE/MAX that is today, if I'm correct. So you have your great-grandfather, Mr. Frank Polzner, who co-founded RE/MAX in Canada. Then you have your mother, Pamela Alexander, who carried forth. And then now you are the third generation in play. What was it like to grow up in the family like yours? What was it like, at the dinner tables, when you're having lunch and, being around this level of influence?
It's a long history, but I'll try to keep it as short as I can. So early on, like when RE/MAX was first starting in Eastern Canada, it was actually my dad was involved at the regional level. His role was franchise development and sales. And so he would meet with prospective franchisees or brokers that wanted to come into the organization, people that were already in the organization, helping them grow their business. And my mom was running my grandfather's original RE/MAX franchise, RE/MAX Professionals, for him. And that Polzner Real Estate was my grandfather's company before it became RE/MAX. So She was running that. Fast forward about, I would say 1989, 90, they switched. My dad went to the brokerage, took over the brokerage, and my mom went to the region. And so starting out, I remember a lot of conversations. I was born in 85. And so old enough to remember things is probably 89. That was when the market really turned. And I remember a lot of conversation around them having to close offices. Didn't understand what that was all about or what it meant. I thought a broker a broker owner was somebody that would break down a house. Like, that's how young I was. I didn't fully grasp anything at that stage, but I remember them being tough times. And a lot of people that were RE/MAX franchisees in those days were really close family friends. And so some of those relationships dissipated as well. But I also remember just having access to a lot. My parents would always attend different RE/MAX events, different places. We went to Colorado a lot as kids because that's where it was founded, from Denver. Different broker retreats. We'd always tag on with our parents. And so, it was a very involved family picture as far as the business was in our lives. I mean, I wouldn't say my parents made an effort to keep us out of it, but it was always there.
And were the conversations always hovering around business, and if you business conversations, anytime you would come, maybe you're walking around the house, you always hear a conversation about, about this company or that brokerage or this brokerage?
Well, I heard my parents and my grandfather, they were always on the phone.
Yeah.
Back then it was always either cordless or a giant cell phone. I mean, I remember, my dad was one of the first people to have a car phone.
Yeah.
The business conversations directly didn't really start until I was probably a teenager. I had various jobs in the family brokerage. My first ever job, I was 13. I was cleaning offices and doing janitorial work with the maintenance guy. His name was John Ward.
No way.
Then I, did some renovations with my uncle's company. He did a lot of renovations at the office. My dad was also a builder before he got into real estate.
Yeah.
Did some of that work, worked in different departments on the brokerage side. And then once you kind of understand things, you're hearing conversations, not just from your parents, that's when it kind of trickles in. Fast forward to when I got my license, it pretty much dominated every conversation all the time, which we had to talk to ourselves about, okay, this dinner this weekend, we're not going to talk about work. And it always crept in because not only was my parents involved, my grandfather, my uncle, my sister, you name it, we were all involved in the business in some.
I find that with myself right now as well. And I have to set the tone. I go, guys, and my mother's just fed up of it because whole conversation all about business, about running the office, about this thing, about that thing, about the next opportunity and this. So it's never been ending for me as well. And I can totally relate to that. I would like to ask you, was real estate the first choice for you, or is it something that you had or your family had expectations of you that you would carry on in the industry, just like how your sister did?
You know what? There was never an expectation. Mm-hmm. My grandfather early on was always make your own path.
Yeah.
Don't rely on this business. Don't expect anything. Form your own path. And there was a while there, late high school, early university, where I thought maybe I would try something different. I was really into the party scene in my late teens and early 20s, and, was starting to throw some of my own parties with different DJs and stuff like that. Never really went anywhere. But at that age, you're 19, 20, it's pretty cool. Or at least I thought it was. And that was something I wanted to explore, but
Which was DJ?
Yeah, well, and just throwing parties.
And just throwing parties, yeah.
Yes. But that's such a tough business. And I realized really quickly, too, that there's not a lot of money in that unless you really scale it. And I was also in university at the time, never really liked school, always was butting heads with teachers and things like that. But I knew I wanted to earn a really good income. Yeah. I mean, my parents had created this great life for us, and I wanted to, at the very least, be able to continue that for myself and for a family eventually when I had one. And I knew, I was watching my older sister. She got her license, and she was selling, and she was making good money. I was probably third year. I was like, okay, I'm going to start taking the courses so that when I graduate, I can hit the ground running.
So tell me a little bit more about what was it like growing up in that environment? What were some of the things that your mother would teach you? Or what were some of the things that Mr. Polzer would pass out on you? And I know Mr. Polzer said that, make your own path. And why do you think he would say that in the first place?
He didn't want any of us, not just me or my sisters, my cousin, relying on the business.
Got it.
I'm very thankful for that, just because I'm sure, you've seen it too. People rely on their family lineage or inheritance, and that can be disappointing, can breed a lot of entitlement. And he didn't want that for us. I also think too, he was really into he was a war child in Europe, came to Canada at 22 with, a couple, I think he had $50 in his pocket when he got here, had a lot of failures. was on the verge of bankruptcy when he started Remax. And I think he wanted to instill some of that, it's called the School of Hard Knocks into us as kids.
So he was tough on you?
Yes and no. He was a great, amazing grandfather. That's the side that a lot of people didn't know. They knew him as the Remax guy, the businessman, the leader, but we really got the family side of him. Family was the most important thing to my grandfather.
Yeah.
It was 96. He moved to Europe full time again to grow the brand over there. So we didn't get to see him as much, but when he was here, he was always with us and present and all those things.
Yeah.
And so I think he just really wanted to make sure we earned whatever we were trying to get and to, not rely on the business he created because he didn't know where it was going to lead.
Were you closer to your mother or your father?
I'd say my mom.
Yeah.
My dad and I have a great relationship and we're super close too, but I also worked directly alongside her and with her and for her for like 6-7 years.
Was that hard?
You know what? It was great. The funny thing is in school, my dad and I were super close. He was, I wouldn't say the lenient one, but he was more understanding. Like if I would get in trouble at school or if I would cut class, which I don't advocate for, he would always kind of help me through it, where my mom was very disciplined and strict on that stuff.
Yeah.
But then it changed. I was so excited about at least when I came to the region, I was so excited about the role in franchise sales, all that went into the strategy and the planning and the puzzle making, as we would call it. She was just a great confidant, sounding board. And we saw eye to eye on our approach to business and things. So it was great working with her.
It's the same thing with my father as well. And a lot of times I get asked this question too, what's it like working with your father? And I said, look, actually, it's not that bad. I mean, initially when we first started, we would butt heads because I would have a certain way of doing things and he would have a certain way of doing things. And when I realized that I can't do the same things he does and he can't do the same thing I do, and I had to sit down with him, I said, you know what? Both of us cannot be on one task. You have to be your own arm and I have to be my own arm, but we're part of the same body, if that makes sense. So we're partners and I have to carry my torch forward on this side and you carry your torch forward on this time, but collectively we'll come together for the continuous growth. And that's why we have our roles set aside. And he was a smart one when he, when we were deciding, I said, you should be broker record. He goes, no, you should be broker record. I said, how? I'm just a kid. I think you're the senior role. You should be the broker record. He goes, no, because it was your idea to start the company. You take on the responsibility. And that's how it was there. When you first met me, and I remember because when we first got the organization, it was actually Christopher that approved it at that point in time, and we had our initial meetings. What was your first initial thought of me when you first met me?
That you certainly looked the part.
Yeah.
You had one of the most detailed business plans that I can remember.
Yeah.
You were well capitalized. First of all, I was super impressed with, you were super young when you proposed this. You profiled so well what we were looking for. Remax has been in Canada since the 80s. We've been on a mission for the last 10 years to really pad our bench, bring up the next generations of leaders, right? We've got a lot of great people that help build the brand, but it's time, like a lot of brokers have been around for 35 years and you profiled so well for that next generation. But that also reminds me too, like those first couple of years when you opened your doors and you had your office that you wanted it to be perfect. And we were constantly encouraging, just get people in the door. That's going to be more important than your office. And there were some times where, we were leaning on you, hey, you have a quota, you have to fill it, and you're behind. Then all of a sudden, a switch came and you took off. You're one of the most remarkable stories in our system, Ron.
Yeah.
And you should be very, very proud of that because, it was a bit of certainly a learning curve, but a struggle for those first couple of years. And then you just figured it out, I guess. I don't know. You tell me. How did that all come together for you?
Yeah, it's Sunil come and just kick me right in the ass and says, okay, it's time now. And you get thrown into something and you want to do it, but you're going to figure it out. And I was just trying to figure it out. And I think one of the things that I had to do was I had to do a role shift. And it was from salesperson to now broker, because I was still in sales mode, and when you're a realtor, you're just doing real estate stuff but when you have to switch it, a lot of times I find that anybody that starts their company, they still haven't figured out a way to switch off the role. You switch that other role off, I have to stop selling and I have to now start mentoring and I have to start training and I have to start focusing on the greater picture of running a company and an organization. And I'm still figuring a lot of things out as we continue to grow and we continue to strive. There's still a lot of, check boxes that have to be taken care of. When we first met, I thought you didn't like me at first. And I was like, okay, cool. You're you give me a hard time, but it's always hard to get a read on you, right? Because whether you like something or you don't, you have you're always calm, cool, and collected no matter what. And that's one of the things I appreciate and admire about you the most. What would you say is the hardest part about your job? And what would you say is one of the lowest points you've faced so far in your career?
Being disciplined.
Yeah.
Is probably the toughest part. You're constantly being pulled in different directions. My personality is, I want to help and I want to be present and be with people as much as you can, because it goes such a long way when you're in front of our salespeople and our brokers. But being disciplined is tough because, for example, I'll get a request like, hey, I want you to come to somewhere in Canada. My first instinct is like, yeah, I'll be there. And then it's like, oh no, I can't. Like I've got like all this stuff on my schedule and I've been on the road a tremendous amount. I've got 2 young kids and a wife. And
like our holiday party, you've not made one holiday party yet.
That's a tough one for me, Ron, because I'll be totally frank. I actually don't go to anybody's holiday party.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Yeah, except my own, like I do on a brokerage, but I don't go to anybody's because, you're all doing them and I can't be in 100 places
and
at
if
once.
you pick one over the other, it gets a little bit challenging altogether, right?
Yes.
At what point would you say, and of course, with all the years that you've had under your belt, was there a time frame or a period of your career trajectory where you're like, man, this is getting harder and harder. It's getting more difficult and difficult. Was there a point where you wanted to quit? At any point in life, at any point in time in your career?
When I was an agent, I wasn't involved at the regional level. There was definitely a time where I was like at a very low point. I had been working my butt off, had a really strong start to the year, but then it kind of fell out and I hadn't done a deal in months. I remember like I had been working like crazy, hadn't had any sales, for several months. And then I just remember getting a call from a client that, I'd showed a ton of property to. And they said to me, we've decided that we're just going to put our plans on hold for the next, 6 months. We really like you. And we want to keep working with you, but like, we've just been losing out and we just want to take a break. And that was a low point. I remember just being like, oh my goodness, like really, like after all this and nothing else was coming together, and it was a rough year that year for sales. And you picked yourself up, and I learned this from my grandfather, right? It's like never give up.
So what do you do? How do you walk yourself through this? Even now, if you face a challenge of whether the interest rates are high, whether the market's not doing that well, or whether there's a new competitor in play, what are you thinking? Do you collectively come together as a team to kind of fight that battle? What do you do personally to get yourself going? Because a lot of people are looking up to you. The agents are looking up to you. The brokers are looking up to you. Your staff is looking up to you. Your entire department is looking up to you. How are you working yourself through those motions in your mind?
Well, in that situation, when I was an agent, I remember distinctly being really down on myself. And then after 24 hours, I was like, okay, enough. Like, pick it up, deal with it. You had your pity party. Let's get going here. That situation, I just gave myself that kick in the ass. My wife was great too. We were just dating at the time, but she was a big support. Now, I'm just a motivated guy. And you don't have to look very far, whether it's our organization, other industries. Like, you face hardships in your career, no matter what industry you're in. Like, if you're a professional athlete, like they have slumps. The best people on the planet don't play well sometimes. It's a natural course of events. Keeping that in the back of your mind is important. You mentioned interest rates. Like, it is what it is. I think right now we're experiencing the result of people hanging on as long as they could. Everybody expected rates would have come down by now. They didn't. This is the reality we're in. Okay. People are going to still buy and sell homes. That's what the media forgets. It's not a typical commodity. It's shelter. It's a basic necessity. So there are going to be a base of people that are going to have to buy and sell. It just happens no matter what. And it's all going to come down to who are the agents that are going to service them. Okay, yeah. So that's one thing you got to remind. Competition, it happens in every industry. We're no exception to it. I mean, sure, Wall Street's gotten involved in venture capital in the last little while. That's posed a different type of competition. But like, I really believe in our product. I believe in our salespeople. We've got the best broker owners and agents in the industry. And so that's something I totally rely on. You just got to step back for a second and say, hey, like, we're going to fight kicking and screaming to continue to be the market leader. I know our people are going to do the same. So it's just having confidence in yourself. I got an incredible team, having confidence in them, and just knowing that, yes, there are people relying on you. And so you got to kind of set an example and be motivated. And just naturally, I'm that person. Like, I'm very positive. Ask anybody. I don't like negativity at all, but ask anybody that works with me, they'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And so that really is helpful.
Who's been an inspiration in your life?
Well, you mentioned my grandfather and my mom, but my uncle,
Yeah.
Michael Posler, he's been a really big figurehead for me. Walter Schneider.
Yeah.
You know, those people, like in my immediate family, luckily they built this incredible business. You know, my current boss, we sold the North American part of our business 2 years ago. My current boss, Nick Bailey, he's been awesome. People I've gotten to know over the years through different networking circles. Gentleman I'm thinking of who's become a friend of mine, he owns this really big hedge fund that's worth a couple $2 billion. He's been very influential. His story is crazy. And just building out a network of people that, you know, spans different industries so that you can kind of a broader spectrum than just yourself.
What's a favorite quote of yours that you always rely on or that always comes to mind whenever things don't go as great or you need a little pump up? What's one quote that comes to mind, or even a couple?
Probably from my grandfather. Never give up, keep selling.
Yeah.
It's one of his famous lines. No stinking thinking.
No stinking?
No stinking thinking.
Okay, cool. I like that.
Negativity. I think, you know, really, Ron, sometimes you just got to dig deep. Look inside yourself. If you're going through, or if you're an agent, you're going through a rough patch in sales, there's probably been a lot of good patches in sales that you've been through as well. Especially if you've been in this for a career, like you're going to have good stretches and bad stretches. Reminding yourself, this too shall pass. I've been through this before. I mean, if you're brand new to the industry, then, you know, you're going to get a bloodied nose, whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with good people that have been through it. If you haven't experienced it, find somebody who has. Ask them questions. And just be as positive as you possibly can is so important, at least to me that is, because it's so much easier to just go to the negative, focus on everything that's going wrong. And it's harder, but it's way more rewarding to focus on what's positive. Look at a situation. It could look really bleak and meager, but having the ability to look at it and be like, you know, there's a silver lining here. What is it? Focus on that. That's, for me at least, is very, very helpful.
Knowing what you know now, if you had to tell your younger self everything you've gone through, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self? Not that you're super old or anything, but
I think starting earlier, like, you know, I took a victory lap at university, took some time to finish up my license. If I was more disciplined, and didn't want to do everything all at the same time, I probably could have done things quicker. But yeah, I would say be more disciplined and start earlier.
Amazing. I like that. And to end off our episode, who is Chris? Who is Christopher Alexander?
Well, I'm a fun-loving guy, family guy. I love to have fun, and I don't take anything too seriously. Obviously, there are serious situations that require, you know, your full attention, but like, I like to have fun. I'm open book, open-minded. I'm really into my family, like my wife, my kids, and my sisters, my mom, my dad. Like, that's really I'm most focused on. Business would be second.
Amazing. Listen, thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot from you today, and I can share one thing with you that I've admired about you. I think when I first met you to where you are now, I see a massive difference, not only in your outlook of life, not only in your mindset, but more than anything, I think that you are a great president for our organization, and seeing you in meetings, seeing you how you deal with other broker owners, and I've seen even the toughest of the toughest situations, you do it with a smile on your face. Okay, guys, in your candid style, how are we going to solve this? We know the problem, but how are we going to figure this out? Okay, who has suggestions over here? And no sense of panic, no nothing, just casually like, the world is on fire right now. How are we going to solve it? And I love that about you, because I've used that in my organization as well. When I look back at, okay, guys, things are not going so well. What are we going to do about it? Who has ideas? Okay, you start with you. What are you going to do?
And that's something else my grandfather taught me is, you know, he didn't want to hear any problems, just solutions.
Yeah.
Solutions. But thank you, Ron. This has been a real pleasure and an honor to be here. So, and you're really making waves yourself. It's been remarkable to see you grow as well. And I do remember those early meetings with your dad at Syntex, and, you know, what you've become over the last, 3, 4, 5 years has been remarkable. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into another episode of More Than a Sale. This is one episode that I am extremely proud of, and see you on the next one.